Hello, I'm Tim Kurtz. Been a member for a while, and the call went out for some astrophotography, and I was getting back into it this year, so I put together some slides to share. So last year, on my way back from my folks' place in Arizona, which is actually about next door to the remote telescope, we were coming back, and it was time for the annular eclipse, and we stopped at a friend's house in Albuquerque. Um, so we're able to get some good pictures for the. So this one was taken with my Canon 90D. I've got a Sigma 150 to 600 zoom lens. I was using my 1.4x teleconverter, so it works out to about 840 millimeters. And I took the whole sequence, but really this is the one that I kind of like the best because it was centered the most. Then I just did a little bit of color adjusting in Lightroom because we all like to see it with that gold color, even though the white light filter just looks kind of gray. So I did get to do the total solar eclipse, and this one for some reason had different transitions, and I don't know why. There we go. So drove down to Van Wert, Ohio. The clouds were a little bit iffy. I was there with about 5,000 of my closest friends in a Walmart parking lot. Uh, and so we set up, and it was kind of nice because there was, easy access to restrooms. There was a Domino's on the inside of the store. Uh, but similar setup, using my same lens. I had intended to zoom in, but I was so excited to start taking pictures that I forgot. I framed it up and then walked away from it, and it was taking different images. But uh, also, despite all of Richard's work for, hey, the eclipse is coming, practice with your stuff, go out and do, some shots, be ready to change your exposure settings. Um, all of my shots are, this one. So it was pretty cool because we got to see the prominence and then, this was Diamond Ring, I think actually exiting totality, but I have nothing of the corona from this time around. I've got a good one from 2017. But same thing, pulled this into a Photoshop and maybe did a little bit of touch-ups in Lightroom. Uh, so we had the auroras back in May. This one was taken here in town. Um, Earlier in the night, it got cloudy, so I kind of gave up for a while. I was like, "Oh, this is with the one time we have this strong storm," and it was just it looked like somebody had a pink light bulb over the cloud deck. It was just amazing. And so when the clouds did break a couple of times, I was able to get that. So I tried to bring out some of the just the pink hues and things that I could see naked eye, but as one of the few. The other pictures I took, you wouldn't think that focus matters so much when you're taking a big wide field, but in fact it does. So it just looked like, pink blobs. Um, oh, there we go. Sorry, hopefully I didn't shine anybody in the eye. There we go. So this was taken again with my 90D. Was using my 20 to or 10 to 22 lens. Um, Stopped it down to f3.5, and then it was an 8-second shot. So if we have auroras tonight, hopefully get something better. I've been doing some more reading on this. A little bit shorter exposures are better, and maybe a little bit higher ISO gives you some better signal. Again, touched it up in Photoshop and then got to use RC's Blur Exterminator on that. It actually did a good job taking out some of the noise. I sent this one over to Richard earlier this year. I think you posted something. Yeah, so saw the newsletter was going to happen. It actually was in the parking lot at my office. So I took my stuff to work and then broke out at the end of the day and went and set up. So this was the International Space Station transiting the sun. And to shoot this one, um, my favorite lens, but I wasn't sure exactly the timing and I didn't know. So I ended up taking a movie for about 5 minutes. Um, and shooting 60 frames per second. But as you can see here, there's only about 29 of, the space station on there. So I had to extract that. And when you have 29 frames per second at almost 6 minutes, that's a lot of frames. So when you run it through this frame extraction software pip, if you don't section your movie, it creates well, 60 times 6 times, yeah, so about 72,000 40 meg files. So have some hard drive space or maybe segment your movie. Uh, that was less than 1 second. Yeah, this was about, it was just it was like 0.99 seconds. So I got, yeah, so that's those 28 or 29 individual photos. I was able to extract that. And I was showing this off at work. And somebody's like, "How did you know about that? How did you know?" I was like, "Oh, there's this cool website that I found." And then it turns out on that weekend, I guess we had auroras again. So this is from my backyard. Um, so I should have put these in a different order. Um, I got a new Rokinon lens. These are really nice. Um, I don't recommend actually shooting at f2 with these because your stars kind of look like seagulls. So stopping it down to like an f4 makes it look a little bit better. Um, so I was looking at that website, and turns out the Chinese space station was going to do a pass that day. So I left work early and went home, and this one actually was done from my backyard. So I got pretty lucky that I had two transits 3 days apart, 2 miles apart from in the viewing area. So did something similar where was shooting with my Canon and a big Sigma lens. Learned my lesson about frame extraction, so I had a much shorter movie. Um, this transit was like 0.76 seconds, 0.8 seconds, somewhere around there. So that's why I only got about 23 frames. And then, went back into Lightroom and did some color adjusting. It's kind of a neat process when you go into Photoshop to do this because you have all those frames and you pull one in and then you just dump all the other ones on top of it. But you only end up with just this single one. So you switch it to this blend mode and then it plops them on top and all of a sudden, bam, all of a sudden they're in there. And yeah, it's pretty cool. And at the same time, because it happens so fast, you end up with a stacked effect on all of the sunspots. So in the full res version, the sunspots have a lot more texture to them, almost like a 3D effect. So I have another lens for the camera and I have a star tracker. So while I was shooting with my telescope, I was like, well, it's still dark. I'm going to try to set up something else. So this one is the M8, the Lagoon Nebula, M20, and the Trifid. And was able to frame both of these on the Canon with a Canon 300 millimeter lens. Took almost 700 8-second shots at ISO 800, mounted on the Sky Guider. So did some, your typical astrophotography, lights, which is the actual image, flats, which is just lighting up the camera. When you subtract those, it gets all the dust out. But did all that stacking in Sky Stacker. did all my histogram stretching in Serial, which is one of the free astronomy programs, and then did some final touch-ups trying to get the color balance correct in Photoshop. It was nice to be able to do this. So when I was setting it up, I took like a 30-second shot just to make sure that I had my framing right, and then threw that one away, and then uh, went in there and set it up. What's nice about the Canon, because it can just sit there and keep taking images, you can hook up an intervalometer to it. So it's a little device, and it will tell the camera to take a picture, and then it has a timer inside. So it just says, okay, I'm going to take a picture. I know 8 seconds later that uh, I'm going to take another one, but I want to give myself a 1 second delay. So it clicks, 8 seconds passes. Okay, wait 1 second, click, and it'll do it again. And then you just program it to say, okay, how many iterations? It maxes out at 300 times on the particular unit I've got. So I shot it twice, and then the clouds were starting to come in, and this was going into the trees too. So that's why I ended up with kind of an odd number. So one of the big three for astrophotographers is the Andromeda galaxy. I would say probably this, the Pleiades, and the Orion Nebula, kind of the top three. But so this one I was doing when I was shooting with the Canon, and so got the two satellite galaxies in there as well. So this one, just picked this up. It's an ASCAR. It's a flat field 71 millimeter. It's actually a pretty cool little scope. Um, I bought a Skyguider Pro, or not a, I'm sorry, Star Adventurer GTI. It is almost strong enough to hold this setup. I was getting a lot of tracking error, so I borrowed my dad's AVX mount. But this is a ASI 071. It's basically an APS-C or a crop sensor like the Canon has. It's just designed for astrophotography. So this was guided. And this was the first time that I was shooting long exposures. So I was getting 5-minute exposures on this. So I had almost 12 hours of integration. But it was also the first time I used the camera, and I didn't know that you should use gain. I always was like, oh, gain, that's going to give me all this noise in my image. Well, the well on the camera is so deep, you want to give it gain so it'll bring that up a little bit. So I didn't waste my time, I think. Probably turned out okay, but I think it could have been a little bit better. But I was pretty proud because you got to see the dust lanes in here pretty well. Um, uh, but the part of the processing on this one is, there we go. I didn't put it in here, but the software does this really neat thing where it takes the background stars and allows you to drop them back a little bit. So it brings this object out. So a little bit of artistic license, but it really highlights the galaxy. Okay. And I did the mineral moon. I kept seeing the pictures and I was like, I want to do that too. So I just went outside, grabbed the camera, set it up. Um, when you saturate a little bit and you saturate a little bit in your color settings, what eventually happens is, where's that cool little light? It's the bottom one. Yeah. So like this blue area here and up here, that's actually the areas on the moon that have lots of titanium. And these brown areas up here are where there's lots of iron. And was just a single image, and you just keep adjusting the color, and then all of a sudden that pops out. Um, and this was taken right before the partial lunar eclipse last month. This one is NGC 1499, the California Nebula. Again, taken with my ASCAR on the Celestron. did some guiding. So this one was 9.5 hours. Same stacking process, and then did a little bit of adjustment in Adobe, and then using the blur exterminator. There's a kind of a neat tool in Adobe. You got to pay for the it's like a tool set. It's an astronomer's tool set. So I cheated a little bit on the star spikes, but I thought it looked pretty cool. So added those in there. And then I think my next pictures are the two shots of the equipment. There we go. So there's the Canon with the telephoto lens, and then the iOptron mount. So it can track, the side reel rate. So like when the sky's spinning, the half mode is for if you wanted to do the night sky and landscape at the same time. But then also, when I was using this for the eclipses, you put it in the solar mode so it knows what speed that is, or like in the lunar mode so you can do the moon. And I can attach one of the guide cameras to it so it can actually follow the stars and feed some more information to it instead of just letting it spin on its own. The iPolar for easy polar alignment, I've always kind of struggled for polar aligning any of my telescopes. This is kind of like cheating. You plug in your laptop to it, and it looks at the stars, and then there's a little red light on your screen that pops up, and it's like, oh, this is where the pole is. So then you just move your adjustment knobs until that gets in the crosshairs, and you're done. It's really pretty cool. And then this is the ASCAR on the AVX mount. So the ZW071 APS-C cameras down here, the guide camera up here, and the guide scope. And then the ASI Air is this little control box back here. That is probably one of the best things I've ever bought for getting into astrophotography. It takes a lot of the guesswork out. It controls the mount, it controls the cameras, it talks to everything. When I want to point it to an object, after I've got the polar aligning done on the scope, it swings over to where it thinks the object should be. And if it doesn't see it, it knows what the stars should look like, and it will guide to where it's supposed to be. Then that's what they call plate solving. Um, then the auto run feature, you can put in there your plan for the night. It's like, okay, I know that this object is going to be up for this many hours. I can get this many light frames. And then at the end of my run, I can take my flats, darks, and biases. Uh, so a little bit of information about all the other stuff on here. So I think that is the end for me. So thank you.
Okay, I'm going to show what I did for this past year. Part of it included getting new equipment. Down here, I decided originally that I wanted a wide field setup, and it was originally mounted on my 12-inch in the dome. But then I realized I can't be shooting at two different targets at the same time, so I decided to get a Star Adventurer GTI. Very nice mount for a small refractor. I'm using a Sharp Star 61 EDPH2. They do have a 3 version out now, which is even better, has better correction, but this one is actually pretty good. I use an old school CCD that you can see down here at the bottom. Old school filter wheel, very similar setup to Tim's here. And then obviously that's all for wide field. For my close-ups, I use the 12-inch f4 reflector with the paracore. It gives me a little bump in focal length and nice pinpoint stars out to the edge. So I'm pretty happy with this setup. I have them both going most nights now that are clear. Keeps me pretty busy trying to run 2 different setups. I do use Sequence Generator Pro to help orchestrate, plan out the evening or multiple evenings because I take so many frames. Oops. That's it. Part of it too is because Michigan is so stingy with clear nights. I wanted to try to optimize my imaging as much as possible, figure out, what nights are very steady. So I built a seeing monitor. It's actually very similar to the one that SBig builds, actually almost like literally identical for hardware. It's a ZWO guide scope and a QHY guide camera inside a little security camera thing I got off of Amazon for like $30. And basically it points at the North Star, and you can see here, it records the scene. What it does is it takes a shot every 0.01 seconds, and then it stacks them all and figures out what the seeing is. So most nights that are not really good, we're talking like 3 to 5 arc seconds. This one really got horrible. This was last night. I was down in like around 1.5 arc second. We're starting to talk like chilly here almost. Okay, not that good. So that tells me like what I want to focus on for the night. Luminance for LRGB processing gives you the sharpness of the image. So on good nights, I'll shoot all my luminance frames as much as possible. And then the more fuzzier nights, I'll do the RGB because that doesn't contribute much to the sharpness of the image. So that's a cool thing to do. And I found that early evenings are usually pretty good. And a lot of nights do follow this kind of sine wave. So that's pretty cool. The other part of it is right here on the left is Unihedron makes a sky quality meter, an SQM. I have a handheld one, but I didn't want to climb up on my roof to use it. So I got one that's Ethernet. There's a little cable that goes down, power over Ethernet, and it records the darkness of the sky each night. I'm out in Schoolcraft, so I'm a little bit darker. Bortle 4.5, it goes from 20.2 to 20.6. For comparison, the remote telescope's probably around 22, way out there, Bortle 1. So it's not too bad, but that gives me a good sense of how transparent the night is. If it's, a little cloudy or a little hazy, that number drops, it tanks. It's very sensitive. Like right now in the evening, like the Milky Way straight overhead, that it looks like light pollution to me. It'll drop it down like 0.3. And then finally, I built a all sky camera just recently. If you buy a ZWO planetary camera, it has a little fisheye that always comes with it. I'm using that right now. So there is a preferred one that does give a full 180. I finally sourced it on AliExpress, and we'll see if it shows up. I'm not sure. And then, so that's great for seeing when the clouds are coming in at the end of the night. I just run a command on the software, and it creates a movie for the whole night. So I can see a whole time lapse at 20 frames per second. So in like 30 seconds, I can see, hey, what happened? I can see all, the constellations rising, sunrise, sunset. The software is called All Sky Eye. It's a freeware software. This whole project actually probably cost like $300, and I have a pretty cool all sky camera. And then finally, this middle one, about 10 years ago, there was a program run by the University of New Mexico where they record meteors, and there's all these cameras all over the United States. And so I'm the only one in Michigan right now. And basically I triangulate and figure out the orbits of meteors and fireballs and whatnot. So that's what I do to try to assess the night. If it's going to be a clear night. If it's going to be a hazy night, I might just give it a shot and go for it. Now, and right here, this little box is a sky alert. It has, weather sensors in there. If there's a little sensor on the top, if a raindrop hits, it closes up the dome. If there's clouds, it detects clouds. It'll close up the dome or open it back up. And then a security camera to make sure my kids don't get in there, cause havoc. Okay, next. Finally, pictures. I think we're doing, yep, wide field. So this is taken with my Sharp Star with the CCD. The Rosette was shortly taken after last year's Astrophoto Night. 3 hours, being wintertime, I get what I can. Just a pure RGB. I believe I did take some H alpha, but had a hard time processing it. Next. Got a little more luck with the Horsehead region. Love these wide field scopes. I mean, I wish I would have gotten one years ago. There's so much stuff out there. 19 hours of exposure. I pretty much spent the entire winter. Every time it was a clear night, when it showed up every couple weeks, I just let it rip. Had 43 10-minute exposures in H alpha. The scope, the GTI actually, at least my sample, does a really great job of tracking. I can see no trailing or anything. But with the auto guider, it does help a lot. So also in November, December area, I went after the Andromeda up the NGC 891 silver sliver with the 12-inch. This is 10 hours of exposure. Loved all the little tentacles in the on the edge on LRGB. So like I said, spend all my time in the luminance and then a little bit of time in the color. I do use PixInsight for my processing almost exclusively. Once in a while, I will jump over to Photoshop, but it gets becoming rarer and rarer to do that. And then one of my favorite edge-ons, NGC 4565, 11 hours worth. Tons of background, little friends here, a little spiral right there, edge on, edge on, edge. I think there's like 32. If I looked at just the luminance, there was 32 background images. Having an F4 reflector is like a light bucket. So I think that's it. Oh, nope. I don't shoot deep sky all the time. This is like my, I shot the moon. I did use my QHY, the main camera. I just let it run in at 80 frames a second as fast as I could get it cranking out and then stack it all. It was nearly full. I am interested in doing the mineral thing. I just haven't. It's a mono camera, so it won't work really good. I think that's it. Oh, yeah, that is it for this year. Actually, there's a lot more data, but I said I haven't had time to process it. Thank you, Pete.
Okay, you all know me, I'm Eric. And I'm guilty of originating this Astrophotography Night thing years and years and years ago. But I've evolved as time has gone by. So let's see what's going on in the last year. And I'll try that one more time. Okay. Okay, so let's jump ahead. And I'm going to start out with the Aurora Borealis. I was planning a trip to Yerkes Observatory on the 11th of May. And I got a telephone call from my daughter on the 10th of May saying that her Aurora app had gone off and that it might be a good night to go out and find a dark place to see the Aurora. So we decided that we would go out to the beach at Lake Michigan. This is from the South Havens South Beach. And if you look at it, that bright star over there, that's Spica. I've got the camera pointed south. They weren't northern lights that night. They were all skylights. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next picture. This is looking straight up. We had the auroral corona, and this was shot, if you look at it, this was my Canon EOS 60DA. I had my intervalometer on. I was going to take a time lapse and hopefully run about an hour's worth, which would squeeze down into maybe 20 seconds. But I kicked the leg on the tripod and the camera went over and it stopped working. So all the other pictures I took were used from Galaxy S23 cell phone. Next picture. Including the pair of pictures that I put together into a panorama here. So you've got the South Haven pier with the lighthouse out at the end. You've got the Aurora in the background, and you've got the moon even farther out in the background, a few clouds kind of in between. This was the S23. According to the data that came back on the backside of the picture, it was a 4-second long exposure. and you're holding it up over your head or down toward the ground and watching it as it counts down that time. Hoping that you're holding it steady enough. It's got a little bit of ability to mitigate the vibration. So it did okay. I was really surprised that it's got such a wide open lens, f1.8, and it shot the ISO up to 2000. Okay, move on. That wasn't the only aurora. There was another aurora that came on, and that was August 11th, night of the Perseid meteor shower. I was thinking about going out to photograph the meteor shower, and what better place to go than the Richland Township Park. Again, my daughter was with me. We had heard that there was a good chance of aurora that night, and we both set up out there in the parking lot. And if you look, you can see the Big Dipper on the far corner of the picture. And this one was with the cell phone handheld, taking a picture of the back end of my camera. The exposure, half a second at f1.7, 2000. So this one was even brighter than the previous one. Okay, go ahead. Okay, this is the time lapse that was being shot by the camera on the tripod that you saw in the last picture. So if you'll just advance it, it'll run.
Sorry, Eric, I forgot to plug the power. This is why I wanted it before.
Oh, we may go dark here in just a moment. By the way, again, this was the night of the Perseid meteor shower. There's not a single streak in these pictures that there's a meteor. They're all airplanes and satellites. So please ignore all the streaks.
Sorry. This is a time lapse. Hit play.
Hit play. And it faded out. Whenever you see a bright flash like that, that's somebody coming into the parking lot. Okay, so that's it for auroras. Let's move on now. I went on a Rhodes Scholar program a couple of weeks ago. So if you look, this is September 10th. This is recent. And I went to visit 3 national parks, Zion National Park and Bryce National Park and the North Rim of the Grand Canyon. So this is my picture from the Zion Canyon National Park area. I'm back behind the hotel where I'm staying. I'm not actually in the park here. When you see this little dark area in the foreground, that little dark area is a pioneer cemetery. So I just kind of went to where the intersection was next to the cemetery and shot my pictures looking toward the east at 4 o'clock in the morning. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, the constellation Orion is rising. You've got the wintertime Milky Way going up toward the top of the sky and the planet Jupiter at the top of the picture. Okay, roll on to the next picture. We've done Zion Canyon National Park. I went on to Bryce Canyon National Park. And if you take a good look at this, you'll see the Milky Way up at the top of the picture, and you'll see that there's something really bright behind the tree. That really bright thing behind the tree is the moon 1 day past first quarter. So it's a really bright moon at this point. The only thing I could do is hide behind a tree and see if I could get any Milky Way at all. You might notice some of the hoodoos down in Bryce Canyon on the other side of the fence. The fence was actually staked off to protect a helipad. There was a small structure to my side, which was used for weddings. And they had a couple tables set up on the inside and a couple folding chairs there. I just grabbed one of the folding chairs, brought it out where I set up my telescope, took my pictures, put the chair back, and walked back the mile to the hotel. Okay, move on. The third park that we visited was the Grand Canyon. And the Grand Canyon, I'm on the north rim of the canyon, looking down the Bright Angel Fault to the south rim. You can see 3 sets of lights down there. The middle one is the Grand Canyon Lodge. Okay, and that was the moon that was in my picture 2 nights before. If you take a look at it, and if you've got really sharp eyes, yeah, I'm looking for the bottom button. Really sharp eyes. Okay, now I gotta find it again. Right about here, you'll see Sagittarius. So tonight, the moon is not only bright and close to the Milky Way, it's actually right inside the Milky Way. You can see a little bit of a star cloud up here. You can see faint traces of Milky Way. That might be the M24 star cloud up there. But I mean, it was just washed out completely. So I wasn't going to get anything looking south, but I did look north. Next slide. That bright moon lit up the redwood trees, and I shot about 116 individual pictures while I'm pointed at the North Star, stacked them on top of each other in star trails. And I cut off the bottom of the picture because there was a lodge building in the way. Got myself a nice star trail. You can see the little edge over here of the canyon looking north on the Bright Angel Fault. Okay, move on. So I tried to get the Milky Way again from the north rim of the Grand Canyon. So the moon is off the top of the picture. And what I did was I had Briscoe, who was one of the coordinators of the program, stand between the moon and the camera to give me a dark shadow over the camera. And I shot off 15 60-second pictures. Okay. So I did manage to get a Grand Canyon picture. Over the summer months, I've been keeping an eye on T Corona Borealis. Nothing's happened yet, and it's starting to get too close to the sun, so it'll go off once it gets lined up with the sun. I hear that, of course. Okay, move on. So I went back into my observatory, and I've been working a little bit with the telescope in there. I'm kind of stuck having to do RGB imaging right now because I've got a problem with the camera that it generates just too much noise when I'm using narrowband filters. So I'm looking for a few new objects to photograph that I haven't done before. This one is NGC 7008. And it looks like it's going to be an interesting one to do. I'd like to have a little bit more magnification on it, but this is what my system is set for right now. There are other objects where I'd like to have a little less magnification, but I can't do everything. Okay, roll on. I did take a picture of M13, the Hercules globular cluster. I actually use this as my focusing target. So when I need to go out and get a sharp focus, I'll go to M13 and get it lined up. And in the lifetime viewer, I will focus in on the stars in this cluster to get them just as sharp as I can get them. and then I'll be set for doing my photography for the night. This one says it's 32 30-second exposures. They're divided up equally between light, red, green, and blue. Okay, onward. This one is also an RGB picture. This one's got a little bit more background light in it than I'd like it to have, but I work from a bright sky place. What we've got here is M27, the Dumbbell Nebula. And the new picture I'm using, the ASI 183, even though it's a little noisy, it's got just a little bit more magnification on it than the old ASI 1600 that I used. So I can't combine old pictures with new pictures. I've got to start over again. Move on. As I said, I like exploring for new objects that I haven't seen before, and I found this itsy bitsy planetary nebula, but it had interesting color to it. So this image is actually luminance, then hydrogen alpha in the red channel, sulfur in the green channel, oxygen in the blue channel. You can see the hydrogen and the oxygen show up. There's nothing else in there besides those. Move on. Okay. This year I was preparing for the total eclipse of the sun. I went to the wrong place, so I saw a lot of clouds, but I did learn a lot more about photographing the sun and getting sharp detail. I have developed a recipe that works for me every time now, so that I can just walk out to my observatory, open it up, 15 minutes later, close up the observatory, walk out, go in and process the pictures, and they come out consistently the same. Being able to get consistent results is an important part of being able to do good astronomy. So I have really nice images now of a large number of days from about June on. Anytime that it was clear, about noon, I go out and take my picture of the sun, and sometime by evening I've got it processed. I put it out on Facebook so that it can be seen. Let's go one more. And I picked up back in December the club's old Coronado solar telescope, personal solar telescope, which is a 40mm lens. And I've been getting to the point where I'm pretty consistent in the quality of images that I can get with it. I actually do 2 sets of exposures for this. The first one is for the prominences on the outside. The second one is for the photosphere on the inside. And if you look, you'll see that I invert the photosphere picture. And when I do that, the photosphere turns this funny kind of yucky blue color. So I go back and I adjust the color to get it back to a pleasing solar yellow. The prominences around the side, this is yesterday's sun, and there's not a whole lot. There's a few of them there. I think that's it, but if there's another one in there, oh yeah. I was talking about this before the meeting. There's a problem with my new camera when I'm working in the narrowband filters. When I turn the gain up enough to be able to get imagery, I get, well, that wasn't intended.
Bottom button, bottom button.
Bottom button. There we go. Right there. That is electronic noise in the camera coming from probably where the cable connects to the chip, I would suspect. And it's horrendous. So I think that this particular camera is going to be limited to using the other half of the picture rather than the whole picture. And that should do it. Unless there's another one. Nope. All done.
If you don't know me, my name is Dave Garten. I've been a member here for quite a while now. Eric was actually my mentor getting started in this hobby here. So actually, I had a pretty decent year now. Got that ASI Air Plus for a year now, and that has made my astrophotography so much easier now. I can sit in my recliner at home and watch TV and do astrophotography, so it's kind of nice. So once I get it all set up, and this is my setup here, and my son Matthew there, he's my IT guy. I'm in Portage here, so I got fairly light pollution there, and I just shoot the Hubble palette. So I just shoot narrowband. RGB and luminous on wide field just don't work really good there. There's a lot of light pollution, but but the ASI Air Plus is just awesome. I swear by it. Okay, this here is the Lion Nebula. To me, it's one of the ugliest nebulas I ever took a picture of, but you can see the lion if you turn it 90 degrees, maybe clockwise, but it's an interesting object. It's different nebula from all the other ones I seem to notice, and I got a few hours in it here. Let me get my notes out here. I don't have the big old presentation like, oh, let's see. Okay, I had a total of 37 hours in this one here. And I try to shoot for get as many hours as I can. I'd like to get 40 if I can, but let's see. I got total 37 total and 22 HA, 26 sulfur, and 26 O3. And they're all half-hour subs. That's all I'm shooting now is half-hour subs. You tend to have to throw more out because the satellites, maybe bright ones go by. You can process the dim ones out a little bit, but this was one of my first shots once I got the ASI Air, and it's pretty awesome. I just can't get over it, how easy it is to get focus and everything. And so, you changing or okay. Okay, this one, good old M8. I actually could have gotten a lot more hours on this one. I was in the middle of it, taking it, went out one night and turned on the scope, and box kept rebooting up, wouldn't get to the main screen. I couldn't. I go, oh man, I'm dead in the water. So I ended up going to Los Mandy, talked to them. They said, well, send it in and we'll take a look at it. And they had an upgrade going or something for $170. You get your box upgraded. I said, well, do that and get it fixed. Okay, cool. Sent it right out. They sent it right back to me, and cool. When I get back here, turn it on, same thing. I go, won't get to the main screen. I said, call them up. Well, it worked when we did it. Well, send it back. So it was actually turned out to be the bad cord, all it was. And they didn't charge me shipping the second time back. So that was kind of nice of them. But this one, let's see. I got another piece of paper. How many hours I got into this one? I think 30 hours on this one. That's kind of low. Yep, 30 hours on this one. 18 exposures for 9 hours on HA. Another 18 on sulfur, and 24 exposures in oxygen. And I like shooting, get more oxygen now, because it seems like oxygen is like a light bulb. It just lights everything up. And the more you get, it seems like I never noticed the bottom button here, is it? The bleed off here off the oxygen is kind of neat here. I never noticed that before. And this round object right here is kind of interesting. I'm not sure if that's part of where a cocoon maybe shot out, or was it there? I don't know. But I said I could have gotten a lot more hours on it, but I was happy to get that. Okay. And then the good old Rosette Nebula. This one is actually low the horizon. I didn't get a whole lot of good nights on it. They weren't the best, but I had some trouble I processed this probably 2 or 3 times before I finally got someone's fairly good. But it was low to the horizon kind of, and get not too many hours. And this arm here, like there's two arms actually coming off this nebula right here. And it's actually connected to another nebula that contains the fox fur, the cone. It's kind of like a big round egg or something. So there's a lot of something going on here with this being like connected to that nebula. And one thing I like doing about what I can do with in Pixelsite is take the stars out. And this is kind of like you get to see a little more detail in them and of that arm coming out here. But it's a interesting object. As I said, it's so big and connected to another one. It's just unreal. I never realized that until I started photographing this and going on the internet and looking on other people and seeing some other wide fields. And it's there's a lot going on with this thing. Okay, the next one. Okay, this is my last one here. This one is the jellyfish here. This is actually one of my longest exposures. I got a total of, let's see, 45 hours in this one. Let's see, I got 25 HA, 27 sulfur, and 38 oxygen, all half-hour subs. So a total of 45 hours, and I was pretty happy with how this one turned out. These dark lanes up in here and all that, and there's my next picture is another starless one here, and I'd love doing this because then you get to see more of this detail of the nebulas here, like all there. Just taking the stars actually dim down the nebulas or something. You can't see them as good, but stars are actually a lot smaller because you're taking half-hour exposures. They just blow it out so big, and the actual star is very small compared to what you're actually getting. So, but yep, I was happy with this year. I say with that ASIR Plus, it's just so awesome. You do autofocus, manual focus on it, and it's so easy to set up. It's just do the polar alignment. It's just great. And I'm getting another one from my other telescope here after. So that was my year in astrophotography.